Hello and welcome everybody, I am Brandon, and we got a buttload of video game news to talk about today. We're going to be taking a look at the biggest games of 2022, everything with a release date, and then we'll do another video for all our most anticipated games. We're going to be looking at everything from Pokemon Legends Arceus, to Elden Ring, to Bethesda Starfield, and everything in between. Another episode of Game Corner. Thanks for joining me, everybody. If you like what I do, please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more, and I'll stop wasting your time. So kicking it off in January, we got Pokemon Legends Arceus. That is a Game Freak game. Of course, they're always ones that make the Pokemon games. I'm pretty stoked about this one because they're totally changing up the formula with Pokemon. We're getting kind of more of an open world feel. It isn't going to be truly open world. It's going to be more like a bunch of those wild zones from Pokemon Sword and Shield kind of like interconnected with each other. But this is still a pretty big deal for the Pokemon series, seeing as how they really haven't changed the formula much since, you know, the very first one. And all of the battles and actions take place in real time, which is pretty neat. So instead of your normal, like, you know, run into a Pokemon in the grass and then a battle starts and you can, you know, choose to fight or run or catch them, and you know, it all kind of just happens without you actually having to do much input. Instead here, you actually get the chance to like throw your own Pokeball and kind of like sneak up on the Pokemon. And it looks like you even battle some of them at some point. In this one video, you're actually like throwing bags at one of them. And then I imagine, you know, once you get its health down enough, you initiate a fight with it. But I thought that was kind of silly looking. So anyway, I'm pretty stoked about that. That's pretty much the only game we got in January, but there's plenty going on in February. Next up is Dying Light 2 Stay Human. That's at the very beginning of February. This is a sequel to the first Dying Light, of course, which ended up getting support for like way long after it came out, which was kind of weird, and it seems like they're going to be doing the same thing with Dying Light 2. This game's whole thing is zombies and free running. They give you a lot of really cool crafting options. I remember you got to make like, you know, swords and blades with like fire coming out of them and shit like that. So it definitely toes that fantasy line, and it seems like they're going even more into that with this one, since it's been like a long time since the outbreak happened and, you know, like everything's grown over and stuff like that. I remember the free running being a lot of fun in the first one too. It reminds me a lot of Mirror's Edge, really fluid, and they really nailed it with giving you a lot of like different abilities for getting around, and it definitely looks like Grappling Hook is making a comeback in this next one. Next up on February 8th is Sifu. That's a slow clap game. If you guys remember, they made that Absolver game, which had a really heavy focus on melee combat. Looks like they're doing the same sort of thing in this one, but they're kind of giving it a roguelike spin. Every time you die, you move up in age and you learn new abilities until you die enough times and then actually die and have to start over again. The fighting definitely seems to be pretty in depth. It almost even reminds me of more like a puzzle game, almost like kind of like Super Hot, but definitely still giving you a lot of those heavy action elements. I'm pretty excited about this one, and especially since it's kind of more an indie game, it'll probably be cheaper than your normal big AAA, $60-$70 game. So if you're interested, I'll definitely pick this up and support the developer. We got two last big games at the very end of February here. We got Horizon Forbidden West and Elden Ring. They're like a week apart from each other. Horizon's coming out February 18th, and then Elden Ring a week later on February 25th. I've actually been playing through the first Horizon again before this new one comes out. It's been a while since I've gotten through the story, so I kind of wanted a good refresher before I jump into the second one. And then it's been a while since I've played a new From Software game, and this new Elden Ring game kind of gives me some like Lord of the Ring vibes. That one scene in the trailer looked straight out of the Battle of Helm's Deep. While Horizon looks like it's sort of just building on its predecessor and just giving you more options in combat and kind of giving you more fluid movement, Elden Ring is going the next mile and becoming a completely open world game, almost similar to like a Breath of the Wild, it seems like. And it definitely looks like they're kind of changing up that classic From Software formula quite a bit with how you kind of get around the world and interact with the enemies and stuff like that. Anyway, definitely get hyped for both those games. I think they're going to be two of the biggest ones this year, and they're both at the end of February, so either choose wisely or pick them both up. Jump into March here. We got Gran Turismo 7. That's coming out on March 4th. That's of course Polyphony Studios that's making this game, and they know how to make a damn good looking video game. This game looks absolutely beautiful. Unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be picking it up. I'm not much of a racing guy, and I don't know if being really interested in the graphics fidelity is enough to justify that $70 price tag. That being said, if you're into racing sims at all, they even put the real racing sim right on the box, which is a pretty good poke at Forza, I gotta say. And from the trailer, it looks like they're getting pretty nitty and gritty with the customization options and how realistic all the cars in the tracks look. Also on March 4th is Triangle Strategy. That's that kind of Final Fantasy Tactics looking game that's coming out on the Nintendo Switch. They're using that same like HD 2D style that Octopath Traveler did. And I gotta say, it looks really good. I'm not a huge tactics person myself, but I think this will probably end up being something I pick up. I did play Fire Emblem more recently, and that got me a little bit more comfortable with that sort of style RPG, and I definitely like to give this one a shot. There are a lot of Square Enix games coming out this month, and I'd highly recommend supporting them in making all of these creative new IPs. With Triangle Strategy, Chocobo GP, and also Forsaken coming out all in the same month here, I gotta give them a pretty big clap of hands here for, you know, doing brand new IPs. Anyway, that Chocobo GP is coming out March 10th. That just looked a little fun kart racer. I love that they have Steiner in this game from Final Fantasy IX. I thought that was a pretty clever choice of characters, I gotta say. And I don't know, it just kind of makes me smile. It looks cool, it looks fun. I bet me and my girlfriend would have a blast playing it. So hey, if you got some friends coming over, or you got a girlfriend that you'd like to play some games with, I'd definitely check that one out. March is also an extremely busy time for video games this year. Next up is Tiny Tina's Wonderland. That's a Gearbox game, and that's coming out on March 25th. I have to admit, I'm not super stoked about this game. I'm not really a big fan of Borderlands. I think it's honestly kind of annoying and cringy, and the RPG mechanics just aren't really enough for me to really ever get that attached to it. I don't know, that game just sort of rubs me the wrong way, and you know, Randy Pitchford is a thing. A game that comes out on March 25th that I am very excited about though is Kirby Forgotten Lands. I'm a gigantic Kirby fan, and I'm really excited that they're going for this whole new take on Kirby. It's obviously going 3D, and it definitely is giving me a lot of like Super Mario Galaxy vibes. Obviously, Kirby is a Nintendo game. It's being made over by HAL Laboratories. And I love that Nintendo's like actually using some of these smaller characters that they haven't touched in quite some time. We obviously got Metroid last year, getting Kirby this year. Maybe we could get a little F-Zero in here, Nintendo. Anyway, I'm really excited about this game. Kirby even shoots people now. They give him a gun. I don't... Alright, speaking of guns, at the very end of March there, March 31st, we got Weird West coming out. Weird West is a weird one. It's coming from Wolf Eye Studios. It's actually a bunch of ex-Arcane devs, and I'm sure devs from other places too, but specifically a bunch of Arcane devs came together and to make some more of those immersive sim type games, and they came up with this little strange title. Weird West is sort of like a top-down immersive sim, as they say. It's set in the Western times, but it's got a very big like fantasy spin on it. It looks like there's 5 different characters that you can control and kind of take through their own little story, and it's sort of open-ended to a certain extent. I love the mix of like the open area exploration, and then you can also do this like Oregon Trail-esque exploration where you can fast travel to anywhere you want, but it takes time for your character to get there, and like things can happen on the way there. It looks pretty wacky, and I'm pretty excited to check it out myself. This one actually comes out right after my birthday, so get excited for Weird West. It's definitely going to be a kind of an underrated one in my opinion. Next up in May, we got another Square Enix game, Forspoken. That one's coming out at the end of May, May 24th, and this is kind of one that I'm on the fence about. It definitely has some really nice writers behind it, like Amy Hennig and Gary Whitta, and I definitely think the gameplay looks really interesting. It's from the Final Fantasy 15 people, and you can kind of see that with like the spiry mountains and kind of how the character moves around and stuff like that. But I have to admit, some of the dialogue and the story elements that they show off in the trailers seem a little bit, I don't know, weird or off-putting in a way to me. Obviously, it's kind of hard to tell how the story is going to be and how all the performances are going to be when you're not actually just playing the game and kind of ingesting, you know, the whole story right in front of you. But it is a new IP from Square Enix, especially a big AAA series like this is kind of interesting, and I'm curious to see if they end up pulling it off, where it can take us in the future. Combat looks like it's mostly magic focused. You have like this armband that talks to you, and you like zip around and shoot magic spells out of your hands. And it looks like it's about this girl who gets transported to like a fantasy dimension, sort of, you know, isekai style. Second to last in August is Saints Row. That's August 24th. That's a Volition game. That's a Volition game. They are very much known for making the Saints Row series, and it looks like they're kind of taking a step back from what they did in Saints Row 4 to a more traditional Saints Row experience. Obviously, Saints Row is still wacky and out there, but it looks like you're not kind of Supermaning around everywhere like you did in Saints Row 4. I'm not a huge Saints Row fan. I'm more into doing GTA, but I do think it'd be kind of fun to get in with 3 other buddies and, you know, run around and mess with stuff. They're pretty much big open sandbox games. They remind me a lot of something like Crackdown, so if you're into that at all, definitely check that out when it comes out. And last but not least, for our official release dates of 2022 is Bethesda's Starfield. Of course, that's coming out November 11th, 2022. Can't forget that date. I, of course, am super stoked for a new Bethesda game. It's been quite some time since we got one. We obviously got Fallout 76, and that didn't really pan out very well. And before that, we got Fallout 4, but that was way back in 2015 now. So as long as they hit that date, we should be playing a new Bethesda game 7 years later here in November of this year. And this one has a super cool theming. I'm all about that sci-fi stuff, and this whole NASA punk thing they're going for is actually really, really neat looking. Right in the trailer, they show off some really dope spaceships and even a mech that gets onto your spaceship. You get to see one of the most beautiful sandwiches in a video game I've ever seen. And the trailer ends with the pilot kind of flying off, and of course it's showing the date for the game. I almost guarantee we're going to see more about this game at this year's E3 or maybe even Summer Game Fest. I know we don't actually know if we're getting a real E3 yet, so Summer Games Fest is probably more likely. But definitely expect to see something a few months before it comes out, just like they did with Fallout 4. Unfortunately, that's about all the Starfield news I have to talk about today, guys. This was the biggest games with release dates of the year 2022. I'm Brandon. This was Game Corner. Have a kick-ass week.